Hi, I'm Lauren. At my father's funeral, my sister stood up in front of everyone and said I wasn't family. No blood, no claim, just a charity case. But days later, the will was read, and everything changed. What makes someone so threatened by silence that they have to destroy you publicly first? Has your family ever cut you out of something important and pretended it was love? Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk. I arrived late on purpose. If I had shown up earlier, they might have had time to pretend. Instead, I stepped onto the manicured gravel of the Hanley estate, knowing exactly what I was walking into, what I wasn't invited to be a part of. No one looked directly at me, not even Richard, who had once spent hours tutoring me through quarterly reports like I was the heir he wanted to believe in. I caught his glance, and it slid away like oil on glass. Mallory had outdone herself. White roses curled up the marble staircase, and a 10-foot portrait of Victor stared down from the balcony, flanked by press lenses and board members dressed like mourners, but moving like hunters. Every chair had a nameplate. Mine wasn't there. I didn't ask questions. I took the furthest empty seat near the back, behind an arrangement labeled Auxiliary Staff. Then she stood, a crystal glass in one hand, dripping condolence in the other. Mallory's voice rang clear. "Thank you for coming to honor our father. As his only true child, I feel it's important to speak plainly today." She glanced at me once. "It's time we stop pretending. Lauren was a kindness, a commitment, not a Hanley." Someone gasped. Someone laughed uncomfortably. I didn't flinch, I just stared back. She didn't break eye contact. I think she wanted to see me break, but I didn't. After a beat of silence, I rose, smoothed my coat, walked out past the glass coffins of champagne and the frozen faces of people who had once clapped when Victor introduced me at fiscal meetings. As I passed her, I didn't stop. I just said quietly, "I'll see you at the reading." That night, my name trended, not because I had spoken, but because I hadn't. The next morning, the headlines rolled in like smoke under a locked door. Hanley's hidden heir, charity or challenger? Adopted protege or boardroom opportunist? Victor's last mistake? I didn't respond. I didn't call Desmond. I didn't call anyone. I sat at the kitchen counter and stared at the framed photo Victor once kept in his office. Me, him, and a balance sheet I was too young to understand. 16 years ago, he'd said to me, "You don't need their blood, you just need the truth." I made a new folder on my drive, War. Inside, I began dragging files, emails, backups, footage, not to expose anyone, not yet. Just to remember who had tried to erase me first. If they wanted a war of perception, they'd get one. But I wouldn't play by their rules. The email came just after sunrise. No subject line, no signature, just a forwarded thread from an anonymous intern. I opened it half out of instinct, half out of something heavier. Inside were audio files, click, static, then Mallory's voice. Clear, clipped, deliberate. "She'll never fight back. Push the timing after the funeral. Keep it cold, professional." I didn't need to hear more. I knew the tone she used when she wanted someone destroyed, but didn't want the blood on her hands. And they followed. The article, the whispers, the look in Richard's eyes when I passed him in the hallway, like he already knew which way the tide was turning. Desmond's voice crackled on speaker. "Don't go public with that yet." "She planned it," I said, "before Dad was even in the ground." "I know. That's why we wait. Outrage is fire. We need an avalanche." I closed the laptop and sat back. The air in my apartment felt heavier now, like it wasn't mine. Every shadow stretched longer than it should. Later that day, I stepped into the legal floor of Hanley Holdings and was met by silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that fills a room before a bomb drops. A junior clerk handed me a white envelope like it burned. I knew what it was before I opened it. Challenge to the will. Claiming Dad wasn't of sound mind when he signed the amendment. I didn't blink. Grant, of course, the man who married power and built his own castle from its cracks. He made a statement that afternoon. "This isn't about money. This is about protecting a man's true legacy." Funny how legacy only matters when it's threatened. Mallory said nothing. Her silence was strategic. It always was. That evening, I drove out to Victor's old warehouse office. No one else knew he kept it. I used to come here when he wanted to teach me something no one else was supposed to hear. The walls still smelled like varnished wood and ink. I remembered sitting at that desk when I was 15, watching him draw strategy trees like battle plans. I flipped through paper files until I found it. A small black USB, label, last instructions. I didn't plug it in, not yet. Instead, I held it in my palm like it weighed more than it should. I closed my hand around it and sat in his old leather chair, the one that creaked at the joints, the one he never replaced. They chose the courtroom. I'll choose the battlefield. I waited until the sky had turned completely black before plugging in the USB. The room stayed silent except for the soft click of the keyboard and the faint hum of the hard drive loading. I didn't move as the screen lit up. The file was named in his handwriting, LJ_final. When the video began, Victor looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner, but his voice held steady. "I didn't pick her because she's blood," he said. "I picked her because she stayed when others only performed." I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting the words settle like sediment. He looked directly into the camera, like he was speaking to the people I now had to convince, and to me, especially to me. When the clip ended, I opened my email, typed in Desmond's name, attached the file. Subject line, "Release if I'm forced." I closed the laptop, and for the first time since the funeral, I exhaled without shaking. The next day, I asked Richard to meet me in the legacy room. Quiet, closed door, familiar. He arrived on time but didn't sit down. "You were there," I started, "when I was 16 and Dad made me pitch a 5-year plan in front of a room full of sharks. You pulled me aside and said I was sharper than Mallory ever was." Richard offered a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Times change, Lauren. Boards adjust." I studied his face. It was practiced, like he'd prepared for this moment more than I had. "You're siding with her." "I'm siding with stability." "No, you're siding with the illusion of it." He didn't argue, just looked at me the way someone looks at a burning building. Sorry it caught fire, but not sorry they're walking away. He paused at the door. "Be careful with truth, Lauren. Sometimes it comes too late to help." I didn't respond, just watched the door close, slow and final. That night, I stood on the rooftop of my apartment building, Denver glittering below me like a million little temptations I'd never had time for. My fingers curled around the railing. 16 years ago, Victor told me, after Mallory stormed out of her first board prep. "You don't always need people to cheer for you. Sometimes you just need them not to lie to your face." He was right, again. Mallory lied to the world. Richard lied to my hope. And I was done waiting for permission. I pulled out my phone, dialed Desmond. When he picked up, I didn't greet him. "If the board turns next week, release it." "Understood." I hung up and stared at the skyline. Somewhere out there, she was probably rehearsing her next headline. "If they want legacy, I'll show them what he built it on. Me." The numbers didn't lie. They rarely did. That's what Victor taught me. Money talks, even when mouths stay shut. I leaned over my desk, cross-checking expense records until the screen pulsed red with a flagged entry. Hanley Trust Disbursement, labeled Scholarship Grant Neeson Legacy Fund. The date? 5 days before the funeral. My hand didn't tremble. I just stared at it, highlighted it, printed it, slipped it into the folder labeled in thick black ink, "When They Chose Her." It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was bought loyalty. And Richard had a price. The next day, the phone rang. Unknown number. The voice that answered wasn't Richard's, wasn't Grant's. It was hers. "Why did you take what wasn't yours?" I froze, not because of what was said, but because it sounded exactly like my mother. Soft, regretful, dead. The line clicked before I could speak. I sat still for 5 full minutes, every breath loud in the silence. My mind knew it wasn't possible. My body disagreed. 16 years ago, I'd stood in a cemetery under Colorado rain while strangers placed white roses on a casket I couldn't look at. My father's hand crushed mine like he was the one needing to be held. That voice had vanished with the dirt, and now, somehow, it was back. It wasn't grief anymore. It was strategy. I walked to the Hanley Tower, not to meet anyone, just to sit. On the marble bench beneath the rust-colored sculpture Victor once hated, but never moved. I took out my journal. "If they can fake her voice," I wrote, "what else can they fake?" My pen paused. I pressed hard, almost tearing the paper. This isn't about proving who I am, it's about proving what they're not. By the time I called Desmond, my voice was steady. I want a forensic team, I said. Full trace, deep. I'll cover it myself. He didn't question it. He just said, copy. And that was it. If ghosts were their weapon, truth would be mine. The air in Desmond's office was sharper than I remembered. Like everything inside had been chilled by truth. We traced the metadata, the analyst said, tapping at his laptop. Voice reconstruction, AI generated, pulled from archived voicemail systems and stitched together using a custom model. Who paid for it? I asked. He hesitated. The order came from a shell firm. Its founding agent was Grant Sorrell. I looked at Desmond. He didn't flinch, just leaned back and crossed his arms. Can we prove it in court? With proper framing, yes, he said. But this isn't just defamation. This is psychological warfare. He wasn't wrong, but something inside me had already shifted. The wound wasn't fresh anymore. It had scarred overnight, hardened. I left without saying much, just a nod, the kind that means I'll handle it. Back at the office, the storm had already arrived. Did you see it? HR whispered, nearly out of breath. It's everywhere. The headline stared up from my phone. Hanley hoax, adopted ambition or legal legitimacy. The video autoplayed, a grainy montage of Victor, tired, silent, blinking. My voice edited over clips out of context, one from a shareholder call, one from a press briefing, all sliced together like I was leading a man who had no mind left to give. They even had someone from facilities say, she was always hovering. It was rehearsed cruelty. Desmond called within minutes. Don't respond. I looked at myself on the screen, frozen mid-sentence, malicious in edit. I warned her, I said. She crossed a line. Now I erase it. I didn't go home. I didn't sleep. I drove instead, past the estate, past the downtown towers Mallory clung to like oxygen. I parked in front of the building where Victor used to give me homework under candlelight when the power was out. The city buzzed around me. I was completely still. I scrolled through social media, mentors reposting the video, people I trained liking comments beneath it. 16 years ago, Victor looked me in the eye and said, "You build strength in the shadows. That way no one sees your rise, until they can't stop it." He was right. He always had been. I texted Desmond, "Prep the footage and pull the offshore records. I'm done waiting." She wanted attention. I'll give her a stage. The room smelled like dust and locked secrets. Desmond keyed in the final password and stepped aside. The screen flickered once, then played the video. Victor sat alone, backlit by amber sunlight through the old office window. No branding, no script. "Lauren isn't just competent, she's consistent," he said. "She made sacrifices no one saw. That's leadership." I didn't blink. My fist clenched for a moment, then relaxed on instinct. He wasn't defending me. He was explaining his choice to the vultures who would come for it. Desmond didn't say a word until the screen went dark. "Cut it," I said. "We'll use it when they hit hardest." The fire inside me burned differently now, contained, focused. I walked out of the archive with the weight of legacy finally balanced in my palm instead of my chest. That night, I sat in front of dual monitors as offshore banking records scrolled like a confession. Mallory's trust had leaked money. Same amount, same dates, same intervals. A pattern so clean it could have been a spreadsheet template. Each deposit funneled into a consultancy run by a man with a last name that only meant one thing to me: Sorrell, Grant's cousin. I emailed the documents to Desmond with a subject line I didn't bother to soften. Now we hit back. Morning came early, too early. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The adrenaline hummed steady now. In the media room, my team sat waiting, half expecting panic, not strategy. I gave them both. "We're releasing the interview with my father," I said flatly, "and the Cayman account records, together, today." A murmur of shock. One woman raised her hand. "Won't this trigger a full inquiry?" "Yes," I said, "and that's the point." Desmond glanced up from his phone. "Once this goes out, it doesn't come back." "Then we better aim it right," I said. They wanted to use ghosts. I'd answer with receipts, let them scramble. We'll speak in evidence. The investigator looked like he hadn't slept, and I didn't need him to. I just needed facts. He slid the report across the table. "Zurich, Company was registered 2 years ago. CEO listed is Thomas Sorrell. Ring any bells? Grant's college roommate, I said. My voice didn't rise, he nodded. Every deposit came from Mallory's trust, disguised as operational restructuring. Classic funneling pattern, offshore, clean on the surface. I didn't respond, just stared at the document like it was an obituary, not of a person, of a principal. She used Dad's name to scrub her husband's lies, I whispered. Now they're both on record. Desmond was silent for a moment. Then, we've got one shot left. Time it right. That afternoon, the board met in the East Tower. All 12 seats filled. Richard presided as expected. We're here, he said, to address the growing instability this company faces. I said nothing. Richard unfolded a paper. Given the media climate and financial uncertainty, we propose Lauren Jacobson step down as acting CEO, effective immediately. Mallory walked in mid-sentence. She didn't sit. She didn't have to. Her presence was the punctuation. One smug glance in my direction was all she offered. I waited. Let them speak. Let them spiral in their own logic. Then I stood. You want optics? I asked. Here's substance. I handed out 12 folders, thick, numbered, tied shut with red string. Inside, proof of every wire transfer, every Sorrell shell company, every lie layered in corporate gloss. One by one, the room went silent. Mallory didn't smirk anymore. She paled, just once, then left without a word. Richard looked down, said nothing. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't sleep. I sat alone in my office, lights off, watching the city exhale below. 16 years ago, Victor told me after a brutal quarterly review, "You won't win by being louder, you'll win when they run out of excuses." He was right. Again. I picked up my phone, opened the recorder. Next move, I said quietly. Legacy restructured. Tomorrow I stop defending. I start erasing. I didn't say a word when I walked into the boardroom. I didn't have to. Desmond set up the projection while the directors adjusted their ties, pretending not to be waiting. The moment the room dimmed, a single frame lit the wall. Victor, sitting alone, unshaven but alert. The timestamp in the corner proved what words never could. He spoke calmly, like he was giving instructions instead of legacy. My blood didn't understand the company, he said. Lauren did. She didn't just carry my name, she carried the weight. No one moved. The only sound was a pen slipping from someone's grip. Mallory sat still, her eyes fixed, her posture straight, but her face cracked at the edges. Richard didn't speak either. He just looked down, hands folded like a man who'd just lost a war he never admitted he joined. One board member stood and left. I let the screen go black and didn't fill the silence. It said more than I ever could. That night I sat at Victor's desk, his old one. The oak had faded along the edges, and the drawer stuck if you pulled it too hard. Inside was a small velvet box. I opened it without hesitation. Mallory's first savings book. I remembered the day she got it. 12 years old, spinning around the living room, waving it like a trophy. She had grinned at me and said, "That's what real daughters get." I didn't smile now. I didn't cry either. I just closed the book and wrapped it in brown paper. No note, just a delivery slip, sent to her apartment, quietly, without fanfare. Real doesn't mean permanent, I whispered. By morning, the headlines had flipped. The quiet heir who ended the noise. Victor's final message silences boardroom drama. Lauren Jacobson's leadership rooted in restraint. Mallory posted nothing. Her accounts went dark. Not even a quote about family. Not even a lie. Desmond leaned into my office later that day, holding a coffee I didn't ask for. "You didn't just end it," he said. "You rewrote it." I looked up. I didn't end it. I just refused to let it continue. The alert came before sunrise. A single push notification from a financial journal. Lauren Jacobson declines lawsuit, leaves legacy untouched. I didn't click it. I didn't need to. Desmond called shortly after. I let it go to voicemail, then listened while coffee hissed into my favorite chipped mug. "You're now the face of legacy done right," he said. I stared at the cup in my hand. The handle was cracked, but it still held warmth. Funny how something broken could still do its job. "I never asked for that," I whispered. "I just wanted to stop bleeding." The silence stretched like smoke. Mallory hadn't posted in days. No photos, no captions, Not even her usual Tuesday quote about ambition. She vanished without leaving. 2 weeks later, I went to the grave. No flowers, just a photo. Victor, me, Mallory, a gala when I was 13. She wore pearls she wasn't old enough to own. I wore a blazer 2 sizes too big. We smiled like we knew something back then. I slipped the photo behind the headstone, held in place by a flat river rock. "You were right," I said. "Patience is the deadliest weapon." 16 years ago, Victor stood in front of me after a screaming match where I'd told him I didn't want to be his second option. "Being chosen doesn't mean being loved," he'd said. "It means being ready." Back then, I didn't understand. I do now. I walked away from his grave without turning back. There was no applause, no witness, just wind in the trees and the faint crunch of gravel under my shoes. My new office isn't on the top floor. It's not even in the main tower. It's tucked into a corner with a view of the street, where real people walk to real jobs and real lives. I deleted the folder called War Files. I opened a new one, mentorship_program_2024. 3 interns started last week. One of them asked me yesterday, "What made you take the job?" I looked at him, then out the window. "Because I stopped trying to prove I belonged," I said, and started building where I knew I did. I heard Mallory was seen at a charity event, alone. No press, no publicist, just a woman in a navy dress that didn't fit quite right anymore. I don't know what she's doing now, I don't care. And just like that, the world moved on. But some ghosts, I chose to keep. Sometimes, survival isn't loud. It doesn't wear victory like a crown. Sometimes, it looks like showing up, staying still, and letting the truth speak when you're too tired to. I didn't win because I screamed louder. I won because I knew when to let silence do the talking. If there's anything this journey taught me, it's this. Being chosen doesn't always feel like a gift, but staying true to who you are is. You don't need to prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. Just keep building, quietly, powerfully. Have you ever walked away from a family you thought would protect you? What did that moment teach you about strength? If this story resonated with you, comment 1 inch or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. Let's talk. Let's grow. Don't forget to subscribe if this story touched your heart. There's more where that came from.